Welcome back to the broadcast number 38. We're coming back with our first ever repeat guest, which is Mr. Ed Armitage. Welcome back, Ed.
Coach, how are you?
Very good, thank you. We're really good today. We're looking forward to another great episode. We've got lots of things that we're going to talk about, lots of stuff. We need to do a recap of your marathon, and we want to talk just more generally just about what's been happening. Obviously, you've came on recently as assistant to the regional coach at BRP Performance, so we're looking forward to you taking the reins over summer.
Yeah, exciting times. It's been a long time coming, this, so it's been a testament of hard work. But no, looking forward to jumping in and leading the programming for July while you're gallivanting back home. But yeah, no, it's going to be a big summer and then obviously a bigger winter period once the races start kicking off.
Mate, I think 100%. I think this, like the way that we've started this, like to be honest, I think it was like probably not the right time to start. Maybe like a year ago, probably didn't have the sort of right irons in the fire or the sort of. I think we've probably got a lot more experience too, right? Like of what all the things we've learned over the last year. Do you
Yeah,
reckon?
I mean, it's been a couple of years that you and I have been doing this kind of like on an ad hoc basis with the Jamira Johns guys, and then sort of branching it into like a fully fledged sort of performance program. Again, it's something that we've talked about for the best part of 18 months of saying like, let's definitely like try and look at this. And for you, especially like getting yourself certified, doing all the necessary steps. But I think
Hmm.
as well, like the buy-in from all of the athletes, we call them athletes because they are, but everybody who's jumped in, bought into the runs, bought into like how we're going to set up the program in, that in itself has made this launch, admittedly in the hottest time of the year out here, but it's made it, pretty seamless.
It's been quite crazy to be honest. Like I had like a bit of a pinch me moment on Monday where we had like nearly 30 people there on
Yeah.
Monday, right? Like
All
it
in
was
the
just
jerseys as
absolutely
well. Like you look
all in
around
the
and everyone's
jerseys.
kitted out.
Everyone's kitted up, everyone's there, and like obviously look across the performance of like we had someone there doing maybe their first walk run session ever. It's actually the first time that person had ran outside. And then at the front you've got guys and girls running 3 minute 40 tempo Ks. You know what I mean? Everyone's along the broad spectrum of like running and everybody's getting their own session done, but like pushing towards them getting better. And that's like exactly what I want, like yes, you might understand that the levels are different, but like everyone's trying to get better, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, like there's no discrimination in the sense that we're only looking at a particular level or a particular type of athlete. It's across the board that we're doing, and people will go to huge lengths of like how they'll develop because it's just purely from just people just buying in and just rubbing shoulders with people on those levels, having like-minded people training, having us who, even you and I comparatively as coaches are very different levels in terms of what we offer, and just
Hmm.
having that sort of approachability I think is something which people are enjoying.
Absolutely. Like we actually said that last night at the track session, although you didn't come, you didn't come. But, but I was saying to the guys there, I was like, we had guys like Anders took us through drills that like he had taken people through when he was like a high school track sensation, and talked through the different reasons why we're doing these drills, and someone was able to come last night and they were able to ask him questions about running. Like he's probably forgotten more about running than that person knows. Like to have those kind of people around is just so good to have that like breadth of knowledge. And I do think that that was like missing in Dubai. Like there's obviously lots of different clubs and they offer different things to what we're offering, but like I would say if you're between like say 25 and 40, like we're like probably like the place to be to come down, experience good performance running as well as like well, I like to say good crack, but some of the stuff that you come out with is questionable sometimes.
1-0.
1-0. They're just in make this podcast some sort of roast. No, but no, you know what I mean though. We're just like trying to build something good where like, build it up where these are the kind of people that you want to, maybe go out for a pint with on a Saturday night or organize a impromptu
Yeah.
Lions brunch on Saturday and have a good time with and have a good crack.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's kind of like a coined term now, but like community is obviously a big factor, and I know that's something that people sort of look to do and crave, and
Hmm.
having that in an attachment with a top class training program as well as pushing yourself to to limits that you didn't even know you had. Having all that in one place, I think, is incredible, opportunities for people to jump in on the programming.
Exactly. And like after the summer, looking across, like there will be 7 days of full programming between like that and the Jameer Johns. Obviously, if you don't want to come in and you don't want to buy in and physically spend a penny, that's absolutely fine. You can do the Jameer Johns thing. There's absolutely no obligation to anybody to come down and um pay to come and join the performance training group. Like there's absolutely like if they want to come, I know they'll get better. They'll have good crack. But like, it's not like we're forcing it on anyone being like, this is like what you have to do. And then that's the sort of way we want to do it. And we want a good, small, quality group. Obviously, myself, you, Cara, all on board as coaches, like delivering sort of different things across the week and like providing different perspectives. And then obviously we're getting more experienced as coaches and as athletes ourselves. So like, it's only going to get better.
Yeah, exciting times.
And you can tell people about the story of your first marathon, which is obviously one of the things that we decided that we were going to talk about. So, obviously, you ended up going to Leeds. Like people who listened to the first podcast was obviously talking about all things about Leeds Marathon, about what you're going to do. So talk me through from sort of start to finish. Number one, did you enjoy it? Like, would you think you'll do another one? Just fill me in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I loved it. It was great. I mean, my facial expressions and how I felt at certain times throughout, I think definitely may sort of have a word to the contrary. But no, all in all, like it was great. It was an amazing experience, like being the first one. And I think as well being, as people who may not have, been on, listen to the first podcast was, the whole reason of doing this was for Rob Burrow, who, died of MND, and it was to raise awareness. From the start, that was always the goal. And I think, I put out on my socials as well, right from the start, it was never about a time. It was never about, what I want to do. Obviously, I want to try and push, do the best I possibly can. But to take part in that day, it was just incredible. And I think it became more and more real the closer we got to the timings and got to actually flying back home, flying to Leeds, like where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
My brother and I drove, when we drove in on the day and sort of parked. Or my mum actually dropped us off, but my brother and I we got there and sort of walked into this stadium, which had such fond memories of us as kids watching Leeds Rhinos, watching Leeds Tigers, watching Yorkshire cricket, all in this area. And obviously, we're stood on the start line and we're going to our. So the nerves are absolutely flying around. And my brother had done a couple of marathons before, so he was probably slightly more relaxed than I was. We were just looking at each other, and then Rob's wife, Lindsay, she goes to stand up to talk to everyone before the start of the race, and she can't even get her words out. She's just, so it's such an emotional experience, and everyone's on the start line sort of wiping their tears away. And Kevin Tindall got up and was sort of saying, let's have a good run and everything. And it kind of just sort of brought everything back to why we were doing this, which was so special. And the race itself, for me, was absolutely a tale of two halves. I think, obviously I'd been struggling a bit with my knee, with a bit of bursitis in my knee, but, there was no way I wasn't going to do it. I mean, I'd seen a doctor here and he said, don't run ever again. And so that was sort of, an interesting experience. But, it was one of those sort of strap up, take some painkillers and crack on with it. But yeah, I mean, as people may not have seen from the race, like generally elevation wise, and I think you'll, when you touch on when you're doing in Berlin, the elevations next to nothing in Leeds coming out, it's so undulating, even in the city itself. We were, for the first half, sort of going through backcountry lanes, like out of Leeds, backcountry lanes all the way up and down. That way it was, you got it in front of us here. So it was very up and down, and then there was a big long descent into sort of the halfway point. So
part.
Yeah, so that was a real, and I think that's when you logged in to see my tracking and said I was running at averaging 4:26 or whatever per kilometer.
Mm-hmm.
But at that point, began to start, my knee was starting flaring up a little bit, and it was a hot day as well in Leeds, and obviously coming from Dubai, we're used to the heat, but it was still a very, very hot day. And coming into Otley, which was the halfway point, or just sort of coming up to 27k, my brother had long gone by then, but I saw that's when I'd seen Ames and just sort of my knee was wrecked, and I was just like, this is, couldn't really run as efficiently as possible. Like I said, like the first half I think I did the first half in like 149, which as we had programmed was absolutely on the money of what we needed.
Mm-hmm.
But then, the halfway point, just sort of body decided to say no. But then again, as soon as I saw Ames, it's kind of like the whole reason why you're doing this is doing this for Rob. You're doing this for, awareness. It's about, just getting it done and having the enjoy that side of it. So then coming out and up that hill, which was 3K of just all the way up, I think it was like, at least like 15 to 16% incline. I think working the way up there, once we got to the top, it was like, right, you've got 10K or 9K to get into Leeds and just to enjoy it. So it's just sort of just manage the pain, manage the need during that period. And then the last 4K coming into Leeds is like something I've never felt. Like obviously crowds screaming. It was absolutely insane. Like people going nuts. And obviously you got your name, everyone's screaming your name and everything. And then coming into the stadium again, like it was just like goosebumps the whole time. And I think when I crossed the line, it was just a real sort of emotional experience. Like I literally crossed the line and just sort of crouched down and just bawled my eyes out. It was just sort of, I couldn't believe I'd done it. Couldn't believe I got through. Obviously, the frustration sort of came out as well in terms of sort of not being able to do the time that I wanted to do, but then also just sort of the whole occasion of itself, and everybody was sort of in a similar boat. So
Absolutely.
I mean, an amazing experience. I mean, my brother did super well. I think he got a PB. He snuck in and did a PB. But just what a day! It was just incredible. And then, so will I do one again? I think it's probably the answer. Would I do one as hilly as I would do as Leeds? Probably not.
Yeah.
But no, as I
You
said
can
to
obviously
you,
see that, like you can see that on the screen there, like elevation gain 1227.
yeah. But I
And
mean,
what would you do, if anything, what would you do differently to obviously like to combat, like obviously you've said that you probably wouldn't do a super hilly marathon, but like is there anything, if you could like turn back the key, like I won't say no regrets because we did super well and we managed what we could manage in that block, but is there anything you think like, if I know what I know at the end of the race, I'd go back and change?
I mean, I think for sure obviously we had a long block of training to build into this. And I think during the back end, some would say like the peak times of when you need to be hitting, up to sort of 2.5 hours on your feet. And then there's a couple of sessions which I missed due to my knee playing up. That
Mm,
maybe just put the fear of God in me a bit. I think just sort of
yeah.
hadn't done those sessions, and they were the ones which was like 50K at race pace sort of thing, and
Yeah,
getting
yeah. There was a one key session about 5 weeks before, I think, where that,
yeah
like you say, you had to do 15K at a race pace just to sort of get it, and then obviously you had a knee issue and had to pull the plug on the session entirely, which obviously maybe would knock the confidence, right?
yeah. And I think as well, I mean, look, I came out, I was as naturally for a first race and first marathon, like came out the first 5K absolutely storming, and obviously you're absolutely buzzing off your head. I mean,
Hmm.
as I told you, when we crossed the start line, my brother and I were wearing Leeds Rhinos vests, and the commentator was like, "Oh, we've got a couple of Leeds Rhinos legends starting the race," and me and my brother looked at each other. That's me and you, mate. And they think we're
Yeah,
idiots.
yeah, yeah.
Turned around, and it's Kevin Sinfield who's like the main guy for the whole thing,
Yeah.
and another guy, Jamie Jones Buchanan, who's done every single one. But so we tried to we hung with them for like the first 5 minutes, and then it was just sort of then trying to settle into it. But I think the training block, I think I'd really make sure that I've got those sort of longer marathon pace sessions under my belt, in my head, that I know that I can hit that time and that distances. And then I think as well, on actual the race day, it'd be even, set out even slower than what I probably did, just to really
Yeah.
sort of not be that guy and be like, oh, I'm going to negative split a marathon. But realistically, I was on pace for what I needed to do, but I probably could have dialed back maybe 10 or 15% even in the first 10, 15K, which then
Hmm.
maybe would have sort of prolonged the inevitable, got me up the hill, got me through, then sort of, then just power on home. But that I think is probably the only things that I would change. Aside from that, I think we had a pretty good block of training, and I think it was.
Absolutely. I think that's one thing to say is like every marathon that you do is like a absolute massive learning curve. And like you can't walk off there thinking like I've got regrets of like what I've done on the day. Like you did your best and like there's absolutely no way you could know like if you had set off 15, 20 seconds per K slower, like would your knee still have blown up? Maybe still, and you would have
Yeah,
ended up with an even
exactly.
slower time. And like, there's absolutely nothing you can do to guarantee a time. Like if you could, then obviously we'd be like we wouldn't be sitting in, our flats in Dubai, we'd be having mansions, we'd be millionaires. If you could sell a guaranteed result, it's
Yeah, I think as well doing the marathon in my hometown where I know the roads like the back of my hand. It's one of those things that like when you know the inevitable's coming, or you know exactly how far you are out. I mean, I know you got your watch and that's telling you how far to go, but sometimes like you will have found this when you went and did Prague, like running in an entirely new city where
yeah.
you don't really know what's coming around the corner and everything's sort of taking in something new. I think
Hmm.
because I knew these roads and I knew exactly where I was going to be, and I knew how far ahead people were or where people were, I thought that maybe definitely played in my mind for sure.
Mm.
Because I was thinking, because you know what it's like, as soon as you're feeling pretty rubbish, you're like, right, well, let's try and break this down. And it was just, that was where it got pretty dark. And
Hmm.
thankfully, at that point, was when I began to see Amy, and she sort of put my mind right to say, look, just concentrate, enjoy it. This is why, remember why you're here. And having and
Hmm.
kind of like getting something like that in my head was
I think every time you do another big race like that, I certainly have felt this, but like you go back and sort of learn other coping mechanisms. Like I remember the first time I did London Marathon, it was my first ever marathon. And like I remember seeing Soph and all the girls standing on the side of the road and like bawling my eyes out running because I was in so much pain, like double cramp in the legs, like my feeling strategy had been awful. Like if there was a list of things that can go wrong, I tell people, I mean, literally had gone wrong on the race. I'd went out way too hard. I'd not fueled correctly. I was wearing shoes that, although I'd worn before, I knew they weren't right for my feet, but I tried to wear them because everyone else was wearing them, thinking about getting to 32K and seeing these guys on the side of the road. And like literally, I probably spent 2K bawling my eyes out to get there, ran past them. As soon as I got through the other side of the tunnel, started crying my eyes out. And then, I walked. It was actually like I just went and had to walk. That was hands up. Had a terrible one. Finished the race, and then was like, I'm like glad that that happened because the next race I did, I was like, wow, I know like five key things that I can do differently, and I know that like don't treat the last 12K as one big 12K block, break it down, wear the right shoes that you've been wearing for months, even if they're not the brand new carbon shoes. Make sure you fuel early. Like all these, like you wouldn't change it, and you probably wouldn't like. I
yeah.
think when you go to do the second one, like when you do a second one, you'll be like, I'm glad the first one wasn't 100% to plan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it was like everything was like a brand new experience, and it was just like I mean, and to be honest, it's like you said, it's the mental and like the emotion side of things as well. Because because you're absolutely wrecked, and like your body's just screaming at you, and your legs are so sore, and then I don't know what it is, like someone like shouting for you, screaming your name, like coming up, like it's just bringing up that emotions, and like already you're trying because you're in like a weird sort of phase of you're trying to keep your heart rate down, you're trying to calm yourself down, but then at the same time, you're getting emotional, you're getting all like sort of hyped up from that side of things. So it's just sort of like a loop of trying to sort of keep yourself calm without
Hmm.
blowing your head off. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you. I've not cried like that ever since since I was like a child. Like, crossing the
Yeah.
finish line is absolutely insane. And then then found Ames in the crowd, and then we were sat waiting for people to come by because it was obviously it's like tons of people everywhere, and some random bloke who I hadn't even seen just sort of went, "Oh mate, I'd seen you really struggling. Well done for finishing," and I
Hmm.
just started crying again. And it was just like, oh my god! And Ames looked at me, just get it out now, otherwise you'll never get it out, sort of thing. And it was only sort of like we got home, had a pint, got back to the house, and then sort of had a meal. It was like, right, I was genuinely like, obviously I was gutted. Like I'm competitive as anything. I was gutted not to sort of do what I wanted to do or what I'd set out to do, but at the same time was able to really sort of sit back and digest and no, that was a great day.
Yeah. It's always a class experience. I absolutely love it. I think this next season as well, like with you coming up and joining more of these sessions, and then just like adding more sessions in, adding more experience, like getting more volume. I think if you were to like run it back, like at some point in the next year, like whether that's like one of the local marathons that we're going to do here, or maybe one of the other ones that we do with Jameer Johns on like a trip. Obviously,
Yeah,
if we're able to sort of sort it out, then it will be absolutely amazing, and like it will be definitely better the second time round. And like you say, if we do a marathon, something like a Dubai marathon that's going to be completely flat, then that does change the game.
yeah. Oh my
I
God,
mean,
yeah,
just absolutely brutal. Like elevation will absolutely cook your legs.
yeah. I mean, I walked that hill, as did a lot of people, and it was just, just savage, but good fun.
Yeah, so that's obviously it. Is there any other competitions on the horizon that you're thinking about entering, or what's the sort of go with the flow plan for summer?
I mean, to be honest, it is really just go with the flow. I mean, coming back after that, I never wanted to sort of say, right, this is the next challenge or this is the next opportunity. I think there's a real nice balance. We were talking about it the other day with Hamish, was sort of saying it's just nice, just training for sort of training's sake. I think
Hmm.
we were saying, like, when you're going into sort of big blocks of training or you're working towards a target, you could be you begin to sort of demonize the sessions maybe, or think, if you set yourself, you need to hit 40K in a week, you could be
Hmm.
sort of getting to that Friday or Saturday thinking, Jesus, I've got to make up 15K or 16K or whatever it may be. And you're sort of beginning to, like I said, demonize it, or sort of regret, or not regret it, but resent the sort of the programming as such, or think, God, I've got to get that in. Whereas right now, it's just, enjoying it for what it is. It's going on a Monday, doing the tempo sessions because it's tough work. It's still hard work and good training, but there's almost no sort of there's an absolute freedom to it, in terms of what we're doing.
Yeah.
Look, there'll be a few local 5Ks. I think we'll definitely jump in on. There's other half marathon events in the Middle East, which are obviously a good fun to do, and we're going to be sort of pushing the athletes into doing and getting them doing it. And so obviously we'll jump in on those as well. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, just enjoying training for training's sake. I've always enjoyed the functional fitness side of things, and there's a few sort of CrossFit competitions as well. So they'll
Hmm.
definitely be on the cards also. But yeah, like I said,
When you were running around Leeds, were you part of you thinking like how many of these lads that are passing you how many of you can back squat 180 kilos?
there was a lot of skinny boys. I will say that. It's the one thing that sort of we always say like intimidation biceps on the start line, and it's sort of looking
Yeah.
around. The problem is there was also some absolutely jacked up lads who were just cruising past you.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's just
always.
like always the case.
I always say before a marathon, like if somebody, especially if someone's being super cocky, like prepare to be humbled. Like you're going to be humbled by the most ridiculous people you've ever seen in your life. And like you're better just being ready for that before you even start, because you're going to stand on the start line. You're going to be next to guys who are 65, 70 years old in the smallest shorts you've ever seen. They look like they've never touched a weight in their life. They'll pass you at 30K, no problem. Like
Yeah,
that's just part of it. And if you're not ready to be like absolutely humbled, like it will happen on the course, and it'll just feel like you'll feel absolutely awful.
yeah. I think it was at the halfway stage when I got passed by a stand-up comedian pushing another comedian in a wheelchair, and that wasn't
Right.
even at the point before like my knee had even blown up. They were just cruising
Jokes on
past
you.
me, and literally the jokes on me. And I just thought, what? And then it's those little things you sort of get in your head with. Oh, what are you playing at? Like, why are you going so slow? And it's like, no, like just kind of again, that's the thing you learn by doing these
Mhm.
things. You just let them go, and you just it's your race.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I think that goes for all races. Obviously, there's a bit more pressure put on a marathon purely because of the amount of time that you have to put in to be able to achieve the marathon. And then also, secondly, is you're not going to enter a marathon every week. And so it's like almost it puts on a put on a pedestal, but like every single race is like that. And it's probably like why I obviously don't recommend to do so many marathons. You can do more regular halves and things like that and test yourself and sort of build the confidence and then able to go again when you sort of feel that confidence come back in because it is a tough. Like I think people, it's been everything has been sort of put down a notch now, like with social media and everything, because you've got people knocking out the park, Ironman, ultra distance runs, people doing backyard ultras of like 500K, 700K,
Yeah,
and
people
like
going off to South Africa doing 90 kilometers.
Yeah, as a job, and then labeling it on Strava as afternoon run. Yeah. No, but you're right. Like even that, people will look at what we did there and be like, flipping heck. Like that's like as if it was some no small achievement. Like you literally see someone's Strava post and as if it wasn't the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, like it
Yeah,
was
I
literally
know.
solid. But like these achievements are so often downplayed, but they're tough things to do. Like the marathon, actually that is a good point to raise on this. The marathon is more difficult to race at speed than doing something like Comrades 90K, and that's a fact.
Yeah, because of this, because you're redlining pretty much.
Right, you're literally sitting at the top end of zone three, probably just below threshold for a large majority of it. You're going to get some serious heart rate drift. You're eventually going to go sort of into the bin. The legs are going to be absolutely filled with lactate by the end of it, and you're going to be completely gubbed. You need so many things to go right. You need your fueling to go right. If you want to get a time, especially if you're at the sharp end of some of the guys that I'm coaching, if you're at the sharp end, you're going to need everything to go right to be able to get your PB. If you're going to go for something, say, below 315, say anywhere down to like 230, all it's going to take is your stomach not taking on gels that day, and you're going to have an absolute shocker. Compared to like a 90K is just an eating race with like some exercise thrown in. It literally was more about just standing eating potatoes with salt on them on the road than, like actually putting in a hard effort. Obviously, there was fatigue, there was sort of different things like that came along with it. But that's just my own personal opinion. Obviously, I have people going like, I mean, now the very top end of it, I imagine like Gerda Stein, who won the race, and she's probably going to be like, well, run a marathon and it takes me 2 hours and 20. Like that's easier than running 5 hours 15 for 90K. But like for my level personally, I thought it was easier.
Yeah, and I think as well, like people, I think, like you said, on the social media side of things, but I think obviously like the 5K, like we put park run, for example, and then like 5K races that you see here, like with Maidan and the Sketches series,
Hmm.
like people like constantly saying, right, I want to get, sub 20 or, sub, and you're sort of understanding the margin for error as you're getting, like you said, to that sharper end is so small. And like you
Hmm.
even look at something like from a 5K point of view, if you want to go sub 25K,
Yeah.
you could really muck it up in the first two or the first one if you're not at the right pace, or if you haven't fueled right, or if you haven't done or if you haven't hit the right sort of paces, or you know what I mean. Whereas
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
speaking to some of our like the people coming onto the programming, they've said, "Oh, I want to get to this particular time within the 5K," and I said, "Well, look, you're giving yourself a very sort of narrow target of what you're trying to hit. Whereas, say you said, let's go for something longer, like a half, but give
Hmm.
yourself a broader spread of what sort of time you want to try and hit. You slow the whole thing down. You give yourself a chance to sort of have some flux in how your day can go, and
Hmm.
immediately it relieves that pressure. Because
Hmm.
I've been in races before, like certainly in 5K and 10K races, where 3K in, you've missed your target. It's not going
Yes.
to happen. And you can just mentally capitulate and you just think, well, what's the point even doing the final two? Because I know I've not done what I needed to do in the first bit of the race. Whereas I
Mm.
think, doing something slightly bigger with a bit slower gives yourself, a softer landing into sort of that kind of racing and that kind of mentality.
Yeah. I think if I could change anything, snap my fingers, it would be like to get people to leave that sort of mentality at the door. Like people go in with that all or nothing mentality where it'd be like, I've given myself 6 weeks to get under 20 minutes in the 5K. And then they, like I said, you go maybe go 3K in and then just go, oh, I'm going to ditch it. It's not worth it. I'm not going to do it. Like just don't give yourself like massive ultimatums like that. Just like go and enjoy it. It's all part of the journey. Maybe you get 20, 40 or something. Like I know so many people that I've coached that have maybe like been within a minute of doing something like say a 22-minute 5K is their goal. They maybe get 23 like 7, 8 times for months, and then all of a sudden have their one and sort of right, they break through, and then oh, it was all worth it. All that was sort of testing them. They came away, get more experience, and then sort of move on from it. And I think that's like, if I wish I could like instill that mentality, but I think people must do that journey themselves. Like, and maybe I was like a bit better at doing it because of like the nature of rugby. And like, even if you're the best team, you're still getting beat 3, 4 times a season. Do you know
Oh
what I mean?
yeah,
You get
exactly.
dealing with that like that like sort of up and down mentality of like not always winning. Like people just fully expect to get out there and like they've done the work, so they're going to win. Like you can go and train like a hero Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. It comes to Saturday, you get absolutely nilled 50 points. Like
Yeah.
that's
And
just part of
you look at the negative, like obviously more recently, like on the pro scale, there's been
it.
like this breaking four. So the
Hmm.
first female athlete to go sub 4 minutes in the mile. Obviously it was in Paris in the main stadium. There's a lot of pageantry. Obviously Nike had gone all out and Pacers, the lot. And
Hmm.
yeah, she didn't do it. And there's been a lot of negative press saying, "Oh, what a waste of time," all this sort of stuff. But it's like you strip all that back, you don't actually understand like the levels of what that takes to get to that point. I think the athlete herself, she just said, "Look, it's going to happen one day. Someone's going to do it. It's going to happen. It's just not today." And
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
was still the fastest mile ever run by a female. But at the same time, it's sort of understanding that these margins are so small, and anything could happen on for that you're talking a slight dip with 150 meters to go, and that's it. The time's gone. I think it's that mentality that over a prolonged period, you're going to be trending in the right direction.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, that Kipyegon thing was absolutely nuts. I think most of the sports scientist people and the people in the sport had sort of like they knew that it wasn't going to happen. Like it was a marketing thing for Nike, if we're being honest, and like obviously a good thing. But she didn't let that sort of get her down. Like, right, I'm going to go. Still got a world record. Like, obviously
Yeah,
not ratified due to the
the
like
drafting or whatever. Yeah,
the drafting and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, if like the pros willing to go and put all out there, like why not you? Just go and give yourself a best chance, and then like if in doubt, have another go another day. I think that's like really key and really important. I think that'll be good for you. Go back and have another go another day when you're sort of had a chance to reset and stuff. But yeah, I think it's all. I did have a question for you there, but now I've completely forgot what I was actually going to ask you. Yeah, I was going to say if you're going to put so that's like part of my room 101 for running. Like what would you put in your room 101 for running? Is there what's like something you would put in there?
in what sense? Like, what's like the number one thing that would need to be in there to like?
So the room 101 is like the Orwell, like the worst things in the world you put in there. Like it's like what you would like you want banned, like if you want to completely take it out for people.
I think people biting medals. Number one
Okay.
thing that irks me. But no, I think in terms of the like in terms of running, what I would ban and what I would. It's hard to say. I think the comparison side of things, I think, is what is the hardest. I think it's giving more information to like average runners to understand that still what they're doing is absolutely like insane. I
Hmm.
think giving like almost by giving more information of like how ridiculous some of these elite athletes are, or even how some of these social media athletes are, to make
Hmm.
people realize that they're not shit essentially.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Still, what they're doing is great. But I think you go out there and you look at what the average 5K time is for like UK.
30 minutes and 30 seconds for a
Yeah,
bloke or something, and it's
exactly.
33,
Yeah,
34. Also, the average person, this is what I say to people all the time, the average person isn't running a 5K.
no, exactly.
That's the average of people who are running 5Ks.
I know.
70, 80% of people are on the couch.
Yeah. So I think,
If you were to get blooming Deborah from Manchester Council Estate that eats fish and chips out of a box like 7 days a week, if you get her to run she'll literally die.
yeah, I know. So I think for me, what I would ban is like sort of at like an amateur level, like our level, is having these like objective standards of what everybody should be doing.
Hmm.
That's what I would stop, because I think it's the number one thing that stops people entering a sport or entering any kind of activity like that. But then also, if you don't achieve your goal, if you don't achieve what these objective standards are, then people then walk away from it, and that's the number one thing for me, like that I want to remove. And that's why with BRP we want to have everybody at every level feel welcome, that what they're doing is absolutely on the money for them, as well as
Hmm.
being rubbing shoulders with people who would be quicker than them, maybe people that can be slower than them, and having that full enjoyable experience.
I had an interesting, not like revelation. I wouldn't say it was that deep, but like maybe it's always been my mentality is like I always want to drive to get better, and like the different of what I want to do to get better might be like one year I might want to run further, or one year I might be focusing on like a body goal, like lose a bit of weight to feel a bit healthier, or maybe like to run faster. And like it's not always pace, it's not always like pace sort of driven.
Yeah.
But then like, for some reason in my coaching, I'd always gone down the route because the majority of people who come to me say, I want to do X in X time, or I want to do, I'm not currently at this, I want to do in this time. And then to coach someone who said, oh, I just want to like I just want to be consistent with running. I just want to run 4 times a week. And there was no like I want to do it in 30 minutes. I want to do it in 40. It was just literally like I want to go and do 4 times a week just to say that I'm doing it 4 times a week. So the only thing that they're really looking for is in their plan as a basic is like run Monday, run Wednesday, run Friday, run Sunday. Done. So it was like, right, okay, that's like, and it changed my mentality to be like, actually, it's not all about performance. It's like sometimes something a bit bigger than just like, they just want to get out the house and like do a run. And then like, obviously after a while, they said, oh, one of the things we want to do is build up the confidence to do a group session, like that's a massive achievement for, like, so I think that probably goes on what you were saying, like all these like, you see on Instagram, here's how I got to 15 minutes, 20 seconds. Like for most people, none of that shit matters. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, get out there and do whatever. I think
Yeah.
I'd probably agree in putting in room 101 for that, I think.
Yeah.
And
I think as
this
well,
is
just on that, I think the number one thing that brings you down to earth, say you go and achieve that ridiculous goal, the number one thing that makes you realize how insignificant it is if, like me, I walk into an office on a Monday morning and tell someone that I did that, and then it's like, all right, cool.
yeah, cool.
Then you
Cool. Have you got
immediately
those
like,
slides for me?
yeah, yeah, literally, you're like, no, but you don't understand that this has been my life for like the last 6 months. They just don't give a shit. They just don't care. And in a way of doing that, it makes you realize that like it's only as important as you want to make it as such.
Yeah, and it's important to you, and that's fine. But
Yeah.
like, obviously, it's not that big. This is one thing that I would like to see put in room 101. I'm not going to call it like not going to call these people like the word because we'll get probably banned off YouTube and Spotify. The word begins with C, but just like people just being generally not friendly and not welcoming into like running spaces.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen here in Dubai, but I've seen it across loads of different places, and like I've seen it in clubs back in the UK, and just like people not recognizing other people of different levels as runners, and like
It does my
like
head
I
in.
think that's where obviously like Jameer Johns is really good because it's super inclusive and like everybody is welcome, and if they do want to go and push themselves, there is like better performance clubs and that kind of thing. But like the people who think that you need to be and think a certain way about running and like have to have this like sort of doors closed mentality, like it absolutely does my head. And most of these people are probably not even that good at running, like
Yeah.
compared to people who are super good. But like I want to get that in the bin just because obviously I don't agree with it. And I think these people should do more to be more friendly, like especially across the running space. Like there's no reason, like you're not losing out just because you talk to people from like say another club or this person's not as good as you. Like it actually might make you feel good to give someone the time of day that you might think is beneath you. Like if like I don't like that elitism mentality of people sort of thinking, oh well, it's not worth me speaking to them because I'm this good and they're rubbish. I think people could probably do to learn from that.
Yeah. I think, and just generally, like, especially that the running community in Dubai is such a small place. We all kind of know everybody. And
Yeah.
it's so ridiculous. Like, and there's a handful of places where people run. You go down Kite Beach on a Friday morning, like I was there this morning, and like you see so many people you see all the time, and people can't even say good morning to each other, or people
Yeah.
sort of like turn their shoulders and sort of, oh, well, what are they doing over there, and what and it's so pathetic. And I just think, what are we doing here? And I think there's such a way that you sort of kill that type of person who is gatekeeping what they think is so great. It's just by being nice, just by being like saying good
Mhm.
morning. Like we run past other communities and we'll say good morning, and they'll just sort of like trudge along, won't be interested. I'm thinking, like, God, they must make their lives so difficult for themselves by being so miserable or by being so drilled into what they're doing. And this is what I love so
Yeah.
much about, like, it's what I love about Jamira Johns. It's what I love about BRP is Like we've got some shit hot athletes at the top end who,
Hmm.
like, and you never want to say, right, we'll have a race and we'll beat you or whatever. But, we've got people who are incredibly good athletes, but also they're some of the nicest people you'll meet. And they'll
Yeah,
chat away,
exactly.
to each other, and they'll, talk to each other. And, you got
Hmm.
someone, like you said, you got someone who's going, sub 3 for a marathon to someone who's never done it before. And they're talking about running, they're talking about like all their training programs or what they're doing, or comparing, contrasting, or the fact that they're all doing the same programming, but just at different levels. I
Hmm.
think that just completely shows up these different communities, especially in Dubai, who,
I know it's the same. I would say not just Dubai. I would say, having seen it in Glasgow, it's exactly the same.
oh yeah, and it's the same in Leeds. I remember like trying to, trying to find a track session, and did like DMing another running community in Leeds, saying, oh, I want to come use your track. And they'll be, oh, why are you doing that? What programming? What program are you doing? Why? Okay,
Yeah.
you can't come at this time. Not thinking,
Hmm.
oh, we've got some lad who's from Dubai who could be interested. Let's hear his story. They're just not bothered, and you're just like,
Yeah.
and that's why parkrun is great. I think I did a parkrun when I was back a week after the marathon, which was a ridiculous decision.
Yeah.
But that was great because again, everybody was just like, no one cares. It's all about you. But like everyone just jumps in together, and it's just
Mm.
like that for me is like what it was all about. And then if you want to make it slightly more detailed, you join a community. But like there's just so much gatekeeping. It's just ridiculous.
What we need to do, and I've thought about this for a long time, if anybody's listening to this and they're rich, then they can help us out. But we need to make a Jameer Johns clubhouse,
Yeah,
which is inclusive to everybody, and it's not a kind of place where some people aren't welcome. It probably wouldn't even be called Jameer Johns Clubhouse. It'd probably be called Blair's. No, I wouldn't know.
Blair's cave.
It'd be called something where like everybody can come in and connect and like sit there and hang out and like whatever. I think it'd
Yeah,
be a good place to
and
to get everyone together.
I think as well, like Dubai is a place where people can take. I mean, even like just general, most places like Dubai, London, whatever, Glasgow to a certain extent, is like, people take themselves so seriously. And I think
Yeah, yeah,
there's so much like, and then, I mean, I'll never forget that track session we had where there was like 4 different groups running on the track,
yeah.
and everyone's banging shoulders and they're kicking off, and not even within our lot, but a lot of effing and jeffing between groups about keeping left, keeping right, what the pacing should be doing. And I just
Hmm.
remember sending you the clip of the morning session in I-10 in Kenya, where you've
Yeah,
got nearly 500 runners just doing all
yeah,
their own sessions, and people are dipping in and dipping out, and no one's batting an eyelid. And
yeah.
it annoys me so much that people taking themselves too seriously. And that's not just in running; that's across like the fitness world and like in the world here, in Dubai. Like it's just it can be negated so easily just by people just taking a step back and realizing that we're not all that great. Yeah, we like to to enjoy our training, but Jesus, it's not that. It's not the be all and end all.
100%. I think that perfectly sums it up. I think people here probably are like too entitled. Like the play, like you say, you look at like I-10 track session. Like this is their people's lives. Everyone gets on. There's a community aspect. Like everyone's being super friendly. Like surely we can sort of replicate and emulate that. I think we're not going to do that by dogging anyone. We're not actually calling anyone out. We're just putting this into the obviously the more positivity we spread and the more people we get involved in the sport and like the more positive attitudes we bring, I think we're just only going to bring the level up.
Yeah, I think we like you and I, we can laugh at it, laugh at ourselves, and also we know that in ourselves that sometimes we'll cock it up in terms of programming, or maybe we won't explain something
Who,
perfectly.
me?
But I think when everyone looks at their Garmin's going, why is there 4 minutes rest? And it's like, don't worry about that. But
I
yeah,
said that this morning. Unfortunately, I will hold my hands up if I make a mistake.
yeah,
I've been known to make a mistake. I am a human being after all.
exactly. But I think the fact that we can sort of accept that rather than double down and be like, oh, well, it's you ballsed up the session or you didn't do it right. I think, we're the first people to admit that, this is always going to be a learning curve and a work in progress.
Absolutely, yeah. I think growth mindset. Try and be better. Try and get better. It's pretty good. Try and take that attitude. Hopefully, I've got a trip back to the UK next Wednesday, so I'm going to try and bring some positive energy across there. Hopefully, get some marathon sessions smashed out, and hopefully, it should be pretty decent. And
A few
looking forward
cross-country
to it.
runs.
Yeah, people might have seen on the Instagram that I've got a new pair of trail shoes. So excited to put them to work. So I've probably got a couple of long runs, but there's some really nice like bridleways and like long sort of paths. Some of them have got a decent bit of hills in them and stuff, and some of them are, just runs along the river sort of stuff. There's a good chance to change up the training a little bit and get different types of runs in, which will be like a bit nice. Obviously, at the minute you can't really see, but it's pretty brutal outside. Like looking at what was it this morning? I did my run this morning inside on a treadmill, but it was like already 40 degrees or something by the time we woke up this morning. You did your run outside, right?
Yeah, I set off at 5:30 and there was 33 degrees and a bit like 60 odd percent humidity. So it's just sweaty. And I think again, like we've told all our runners, like don't read too much into the sort of the data during this time. I think just getting out there and doing it is a massive achievement. I think, then coming into winter, that's when you can become a bit sharper in terms of trying to hit your numbers or what that may need to be. But right now, it's just getting out there, doing the work that you can, if you have to call it, like everything. Like we've said it on a Wednesday with Jamira Johns, and we say it on a Monday, and on Thursday nights at the track. It's everything is for quality in this time of year. As soon as you feel that quality drop and you pull out, that's not an issue at all, because you don't want to be sort of just burning in the red and just putting yourself into a hole where your recovery could end up being 2 or 3 days, 4 days before you're back to where you need to be. So everything for quality. And that's something that we'll be focusing on all of July when, whilst you're away, is, all the reps will be for quality.
And then as well, like not to forget, I think people get, especially I've had like quite a few conversations for people who have been speaking to me, is obviously they see someone like myself doing like this as a full-time job, and then obviously I've not got anything like I'm sitting at a laptop, yeah, programming and stuff, but most of the time I'm out doing sports kind of thing. Like you must remember, like if that's not your purpose, like you might be like Dubai's hottest recruitment or agent, or you might be a top lawyer. You might like at the end of the day, you've got to be able to, if your running's not making you better in the other things and other aspects of your life, or you might just be like a parent or someone or whatever, if it's not making you better, you can't be walking off these runs in the morning and going, I can't function for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
This is like a small part of life. Like I do think like sort of like looking to become better people and like better overall humans is obviously a good part of it. And like to go down there, do a session, feel good, walk away from it, do your full day's work, full of energy, come home, eat a nice dinner, go to bed, sleep soundly is a lot more positive than, like you say, today we've got 10 400-meter reps. You do 6, you get yourself into a bin, you can't cool down, you feel sick, you go into work, you can't work, you get home, you don't come to the next session. And that's ultimately what it's all about, is you don't come to the next session because you feel like absolute trash, knock yourself back. And then, I think that's super important. Like running is such a longevity and consistency game that like if you're able to put in 10 sessions where you do something is better than 3 of the world's greatest sessions where you die, can't do any work, and then you probably don't do the rest of the 7 sessions.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, that's something that we always say to our beginners is at the right at that point in their sort of running journey, it's about building feel and understanding what that is. And I think
Mm-hmm.
here it's so, in the summer, it's so difficult because you could start, you could be 3 minutes in and your heart rate could be jumping up around 170. And it's sort of understanding, okay, now I need to dial it back and dial it in. I think that's some of the biggest thing that I've been learning during this period, because this is the most prolonged period of running that I've done ever in my 32 years of life. I now have got an understanding of feel of where my body is, or what I'm thinking, or heart rate wise, or how my legs are feeling, and what I need to do, or how I can change that. And I think by getting more people just to do more consistent sessions and sort of test those areas, I think will be, when it comes into winter, when the weather cools down and race season comes, that is, such worth its weight in gold.
I like that. I think that's a good note to leave positively on, Edward. What do you reckon?
I agree. I agree, Mr.
It's
Blair.
been actually a really interesting conversation. To be honest, I've enjoyed it because we've been talking for like 50 minutes and I've literally not even noticed it. So that's been really, really good. And I appreciate your insight and giving us back the feedback on Leeds Marathon. And I do hope that you will put faith in me once again to be able to train you up for the next marathon, whenever that may be, or the next effort. We've obviously got a lot of races coming up. And obviously we've got the performance sessions, like we mentioned. So Monday will be my last session here in Dubai, where we're doing our performance tempo run. And then from Thursday, you'll be taking over the Thursday night track, the Saturday long run, and obviously the Monday there for 3 weeks after. So everyone will be able to still sort of put good runs in and do whatever. And I will be there, a sort of virtual note, be able to check in on everyone's plans and stuff. So it's exciting.
Big stuff coming.
And by the sounds of it, it sounds like you just had lunch delivered. So that's really exciting.
Yeah, on that note, I'm
And
gonna
on
eat
that note,
something.
okay, Edward, thank you very much for your time. And then if you've listened to this and you've got this far, it sounds obviously cringy, and I hate saying it at the end of the videos, but if you do sort of give it a like or a comment on you, or you sort of do subscribe to it, most of the listeners are normally listening now on YouTube, which is really nice because you get to see our beautiful faces. Now mine is in 4K, so it's even better because I got a new camera. But most of the people are listening, but obviously it really helps me out being able to push stuff out on this sort of different platforms and reach more people. So over the last few months, we've had like more listeners than ever before. You know, some of them have been 300-400 listeners, which is absolutely wild, isn't it? Think about
I mean,
300-400
you
people.
couldn't imagine that many people like at all. So that's absolutely insane.
And if you do want to laugh, you can go back and listen to the first 3 or 4 that we did, because some of them have like literally 4 listeners, which is like still now to this day they have
Your
4. But the
mum,
fact
my
that like,
mum.
yeah, exactly, yeah, your mum, yeah. That's good. But yeah, so it's obviously so good for them to be able to listen in and like, yeah, I'm loving it. And thank you very much for supporting. But yeah, and if you've got like a big company and want to pay us millions of pounds for sponsorship, then obviously you can do that too.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe.
But thanks very much for listening, and I appreciate it, Ed. I hope you enjoy. What's for lunch? Actually, what's the final word? What's for lunch?
The gasmen who are coming to check our meter, so it's not quite as glamorous as what we once thought. Which is a
Unfortunate.
shame. Which is
Well,
a shame.
sorry about that. I'll see you on the next episode.
Safe travels,
Thank you
coach.
very much.
Speak soon.
Bye bye. Bye.